Wait a minute, that's not right. The Judgment Day looked to stop the terror in an otherwise unholy night in the women's division, and a belt turns into a strap match? Okay. In the news! And the news indeed, I am back from my trip to Disney World after going to SmackDown Live in Orlando, Florida. So it is good to be back. But before we begin, I want to thank the Sports Zoo for filling in for me, so that allowed me the opportunity to ride Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. And you would be shocked to know that Drax the Destroyer amazingly looks a whole lot like an alien version of Batista. Who knew? Well, nonetheless, I really like Drax because he at least named me a Guardian of the Galaxy. That said, we were still in Florida, and even though they said Fort Lauderdale, we were really in Sunrise, Florida for Monday Night Raw. So we had one title match, and it was for the Women's Tag Team Championship between the unholy union of Fire and Dawn, Damage Control, and the Pure Fusion Collective. Well, there was a brief fight before the bell with Shayna attacking Alba Fire, but things got sorted out, and from there it was pretty much all Damage Control, with Io brilliantly using her opponent's momentum against them multiple times in sequence. Then she landed back-to-back bullet trains in opposing corners, then with Kairi landed a superplex, and speaking of Kairi, she hit a crossbody on both members of the Pure Fusion Collective, and when she went for an insane elbow, Shayna was able to get the knees up, preventing her from connecting. But this gave Fire and Dawn the opportunity to sneak in yet again and land their backstabber Swanton Bomb combo move to pin Shayna and retain the championship. For the Unholy Union, this is, maybe not surprisingly, their first successful title defense in the 2 months that they've held the titles. And they are just 3-3 in all tag matches, but admittedly are 2-0 in these multi-team tags, which at least this time they were able to land their own finisher to get the win. For Damage Control, and specifically this combo of Io and Kairi, they are just 1-1 in all tags since the last 2 weeks have been their only 2 matches. And for the Pure Fusion Collective, well, it's a new name, but the same old song and dance, as they are 9-5 in all tags, but 0-4 in championship matches. But in our match of the night, it was Sheamus versus Pete Dunne to kick off the show, and after Dunne injured Sheamus's hand with that shillelagh last week, Dunne attacked it early and often with that patented joint manipulation. And surprisingly, we had a 10 beats of the Balron battle, with Sheamus being blocked from it, with Dunne being able to manipulate those joints and then landing the 10 beats himself. However, Sheamus was not amused by this and hit his own 10 beats, and then did a remix of those beats by landing them again, but this time with Dunne horizontal to the mat. Later, Dunne was able to land an impressive sit-out powerbomb on Sheamus, and then put his injured hand in the turnbuckle. But as Dunne had his back turned, Sheamus was able to rip off the turnbuckle and then immediately hit the brogue kick to get the win. For Sheamus, he impressively has won 4 out of his last 5 matches and is 6-3 in one-on-one action, while Dunne, despite a very good effort and a pretty wise strategy, he falls to 0-2 in one-on-one matches for the year, and unfortunately, Tyler Bate looks nowhere to be found. In our main event of the night, we had Randy Orton take on Ludwig Kaiser. Well, Orton actually started the show saying that Gunther made this battle personal, and Gunther then came out and agreed by saying that Orton made it personal. Nonetheless, as you would expect, Kaiser came up from behind to try to attack Orton. Fortunately, Randy was able to sense it and knocked him over the ropes with a clothesline. Gunther and Orton then battled for a moment, but Kaiser came right back in and did a chop block on Orton's left knee, and Gunther landed a clothesline to end this segment. But once we got to the match, Kaiser smartly attacked that left knee that he hurt in that segment. But after Kaiser tried to do a couple chops and land a sideways slam on Orton through the announce table, well, Orton just kind of seemed to get upset by that, and he hit 4 sideways slams on the announce table himself, then went through all of the hits with a superplex, that vintage draping DDT, and well, Kaiser at least was able to avoid the RKO to finish it off, but only momentarily, as Orton tried a second time and hit it out of nowhere to get the win. But Orton immediately turned his attention to Gunther at ringside and called him into the ring, and the two battled to end this show. For the match, this was Orton's first one-on-one match since May, when he lost to Gunther in the King of the Ring finals, but he's still an impressive 8-1. For Kaiser, well, maybe he's still not quite 100%, as he's dropped 2 matches in 2 weeks since returning, falling to 3-2-1. We had a rematch from last week with Big Bronson Reed taking on The Miz, but The Miz wanted it to be a no DQ match, so he might have a better chance to beat Reed this time, and he said he wasn't sure that he wanted the match, but he felt he had to do it for R-Truth. Well, Miz was actually pretty smart to take advantage of that no DQ stipulation, and involved steel chairs, kendo sticks, trash cans, and a table. But surprisingly, Reed was able to quickly kick out of a tornado DDT, landing his head on top of a steel chair. It was pretty much over from there, as Reed hit a Death Valley driver through a table set up in the corner, and then one tsunami to get the win. But as you would guess, Reed was probably going to go for 5 more tsunamis. However, The Miz was spared, with Braun Strowman coming to the ring to save him. Now, surprisingly, Reed and Strowman did not actually battle right there, but they have a match now set up for next week. Reed impressively has won 6 out of 7 matches, and for the first time goes above 500 at 7-6 in one-on-one action, while The Miz has lost those 2 matches to Reed in 2 weeks, and he's just 2-4 in one-on-one matches. We had a 6-man tag between the New Day and Odyssey Jones against the Final Testament, but before the match, we had Woods finally telling Kofi that he felt like he was trying to replace Big E with Jones. However, Kingston assured him that that was not the case, so it seemed like Woods was assuaged, but it seemed to be only momentarily, because during the match, as Kingston went for a tag, he tagged in Jones instead of Woods, even though Jones was indeed closer, but Woods didn't look too happy about it. However, Jones was able to land a double clothesline on both members of AOP, and the action broke down from there, ending, however, with Jones landing that spinning sideways slam to get the win. Well, this was, of course, the first match for the New Day and Jones, so they go to 1-0. But you would think the Final Testament would be better with that 3-man trio as a group, but they are just 1-2 in 6-man tags, with their only win against the Alpha Academy. But speaking of the Alpha Academy, we had Maxine Dupree taking on her former best friend, Ivy Now, after Ivy attacked her last week during the match between American Made and Alpha Academy. Well, in this one, the bell never rang, as Maxine jumped the gun to dropkick Ivy and then slam her twice into the barricade, slam her again into the announce table, and hit a fisherman suplex before finally tossing her back into the ring. But Ivy countered from there, landing a big kick and starting to ground and pound before the lights went out yet again, this time with Abby the Witch appearing behind Ivy. Well, that caused everybody from American Made and the Wyatt Six to show up, and Abby hit a crossbody on Ivy, clearing the women from the ring. And then all of the men started to battle when Chad Gable was finally hit with a Sister Abigail by Uncle Howdy to end the segment. But surprisingly, this will set up a one-on-one match between Howdy and Gable next week. Well, since it was a no contest, Ivy goes to 1-3-1 and Maxine goes to 0-1-1 in one-on-one action. Beyond the mat for Monday Night Raw, well, we were supposed to have another match between Dominic Mysterio and Damian Priest, as we had a few dueling backstage segments between the New Judgment Day and the Terror Twins. But the only important note out of all of that was that Dom was challenging Priest to a one-on-one battle tonight, which of course Rhea and Damian knew would be a trap, but they didn't care and wanted the match anyways. So when Priest made his way to the ring, of course, Carlito, JD McDonough, and Finn Balor, wielding a steel chair, all tried to attack Priest, but were rather unsuccessful in doing so, as Priest took them all out, but at least Balor was spared some major damage when the other members of the Judgment Day stopped Priest from landing both a chair shot and a South of Heaven chokeslam. Rhea then appeared behind Dom and landed a headbutt right to Priest, where he landed a vicious forearm, so that Rhea then could clear off the announce table and attempt a riptide through the table on Dom, but Liv yet again came to Dom's defense and hit Rhea with a steel chair in the back, then threw her up against the steel steps and the ring post on her bad shoulder. And the Judgment Day put an exclamation point on it, with Balor hitting a coup de grace on Priest, followed by Liv landing in Oblivion, and Dom finishing it off with a frog splash on Priest, leaving both of the Terror Twins lying in the middle of the ring. Earlier on, we had CM Punk come out to the middle of the ring and congratulate the Florida Panthers for their Stanley Cup championship. And yeah, the Sports Zoo told me to congratulate them as well for such a monumental achievement in their first Stanley Cup victory, but he did complain that there were no members of the current team there and they had to use Robert Luongo instead as their guest. Oh well, what can you do? Nonetheless, after about 5 minutes of rambling by CM Punk and saying how he was the Taylor Swift for men, and I don't know about that. Maybe we'll talk about that later in the week. Nonetheless, Punk finally got down to business and said that his big news was challenging Drew McIntyre to a strap match at Bash in Berlin. Well, McIntyre, of course, came out and he accepted, but wondered whether the straight edge savior had started to drink. But Punk was thinking straight and tried to get the upper hand when he volunteered to trade the strap that he was holding for the bracelet. Of course, however, McIntyre declined. Backstage, we saw Braun Breaker announce that Pierce was holding an Intercontinental Championship #1 Contenders tournament starting next week on Raw. And lastly, Michael Cole announced that this was Pat McAfee's last week on Raw for the entire football season, but he will return in January. And the Sports Zoo again interrupted me and wanted me to congratulate Mark Caboli for his new role on the Pat McAfee Show and as a WWE contributor on WWE.com. So please go and see him. He is apparently a great writer. And with that, let's go to STFs. And in tonight's STFs, let's first start off by saying there are no STFs when Gunther and Orton ended the show by battling each other in the ring, and Sonya, surprisingly, does not pick up an STF for attacking Kairi during the match because we were under triple threat rules, but we can only wonder why Sonya just didn't keep fighting everyone during the match to help the PFC win. However, neither of those groups get off completely scot-free as Shayna attacked Fire before the bell, causing a scuffle, so we will give a fine to Shayna. And Kaiser tried to attack Orton to open the show, and both he and Gunther were eventually able to overwhelm him, so both Kaiser and Gunther will pick up fines. During the six-man tag match, Scarlett grabbed Kofi Kingston's legs out from under him while the referee was distracted, so she will pick up a fine. We had two separate matches that were ruined before they ever got started. First, when Maxine Dupree attacked Ivy Nile before the bell and took her to the outside, throwing her up against the barricade and onto the announce table before Ivy was finally able to turn it back around inside the ring. But Abby the Witch appeared from behind Ivy and eventually hit a crossbody, and everything broke down between American Made and the Wyatt Six. So Maxine and Abby will both pick up 1 week suspensions. And with that, we will note that now that all of the Wyatt Six members have been unmasked, and Adam Pearce confirmed that they were all signed to the Monday Night Raw roster, they will now be eligible for STFs. However, they were not for that original brutal attack. And in the other match that was ruined, the Dominic Mysterio versus Damian Priest match never happened because Carlito, JD McDonough, and Finn Balor with a steel chair all came to the ring to attack Priest before he ever was able to get inside the ring to start the match. Well, there was obviously a fight from there, and the match never started, so all of Carlito, Balor, and McDonough will pick up 1 week suspensions. The Judgment Day stopped the Terror Twins in their tracks while the Unholy Union found a way to retain their titles. And we have Punk versus McIntyre in a strap match in Berlin. I'm Dr. O'Kay reporting on the WWE, where everything is okay.